Snowflakes fell lazily through the still night air, swirling in the soft glow of street lamps like tiny pieces of glitter. It was Christmas night in the small town of Millbrook, and the streets were almost empty. From every direction came faint, comforting sounds, distant carols drifting from radios, muffled laughter from behind frosted windows, and the clinking of cutlery as families gathered for their holiday feasts. The houses were wrapped in lights, roofs outlined with glowing bulbs, front yards dotted with inflatable Santas and snowmen. The whole scene felt like something from a postcard, but not every corner of the town was filled with warmth that night. On a worn wooden bench by the small park near Main Street, a man sat alone. His back was straight, his shoulders squared in a way that spoke of discipline and years of training, but his stillness wasn't the calm kind, it was heavy, as though the weight of the world rested on him. He wore a military uniform, neat but weathered. His boots, dusted with fresh snow, looked like they'd marched through places most people couldn't imagine. He held a small photograph in his gloved hands, his thumbs running slowly along its edges as though afraid to smudge it. Every so often, he glanced at the picture, and something in his eyes shifted, pain, longing, and a softness that didn't match his rigid posture. Tom Anderson came down that same snowy street with his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. They had just left the small corner grocery store with a brown paper bag full of last-minute dinner items, cranberry sauce, a fresh loaf of bread, and the bag of marshmallows Lily had convinced him they absolutely needed for the cocoa. Tom's wool coat was buttoned to his chin, his scarf tucked neatly inside, and his boots crunched against the snow. Lily was humming a Christmas tune and skipping in little hops beside him, her pink hat bouncing on her head, her scarf trailing like a streamer. When they reached the edge of the park, Lily slowed, her humming fading. She tugged at her father's sleeve. "Daddy," she whispered, her breath forming a cloud in the cold air, "why's that man sitting there all by himself?" She nodded toward the bench. "He looks sad." Tom turned his head and saw the soldier. There was something about the man's stillness that struck him, not just loneliness, but a deep exhaustion that went beyond the physical. It reminded Tom of the first Christmas after Rachel passed away, when the apartment felt too quiet, and he had sat staring at the wall long after Lily had gone to bed, wondering how to fill the emptiness. For a moment, Tom thought about walking past. The man might want to be alone, and strangers didn't usually appreciate uninvited conversation. But then Lily whispered again, this time more urgently, "No one should be alone on Christmas, Daddy." That did it. Tom adjusted the grocery bag in his arms and walked toward the bench. As he got closer, the soldier's eyes flicked up, alert but cautious, like someone used to reading situations quickly. "Hey," Tom began softly, offering a small smile, "Merry Christmas. You, got any plans tonight?" The man shook his head. "No, sir. Just passing through." His voice was polite, but there was distance in it, like he'd learned to keep people at arm's length. Tom hesitated for a second, then spoke. "Well, we've got a ham in the oven, some mashed potatoes, and my daughter makes the best hot cocoa in the neighborhood. If you'd like, you're welcome to join us." The soldier's brow furrowed slightly. I wouldn't want to intrude." "You wouldn't be," Tom said, his voice warm but steady. "You'd be family tonight." Lily stepped forward and grinned. "We have candy canes, too." The soldier's lips curved into the faintest smile, a small crack in the guarded expression he wore. "All right, I'd like that." The three of them started walking through the snow. Daniel, that was his name, kept his steps measured, his gaze moving between the glowing houses they passed. As they talked, Tom learned that Daniel had returned from deployment overseas just a few days ago. He had been planning to visit his parents for Christmas, but they'd moved to another state while he was away, and the winter storms had grounded travel. "Guess I didn't plan my Christmas very well," Daniel said with a faint, self-deprecating chuckle. Tom smiled. "Sometimes the best Christmases are the ones you don't plan at all." Lily, already comfortable with their new companion, began telling Daniel about her cat, Muffin, who apparently had a habit of knocking ornaments off their Christmas tree. She described the snow fort she had built last week, complete with secret tunnels and a marshmallow stash. Daniel listened with real attention, nodding and smiling, as though each detail mattered. By the time they reached Tom's apartment building, the air between them no longer felt like strangers walking together. Inside, the apartment was small but welcoming. The scent of roasted ham, cinnamon, and baking bread filled the air. The Christmas tree in the corner stood proudly, its mismatched ornaments twinkling in the soft glow of the lights. Half of them were homemade, Rachel's tradition, which Tom and Lily had kept going. Tom hung Daniel's coat and motioned for him to make himself comfortable while Lily proudly showed off the decorations. She pointed to a slightly lopsided paper star at the top of the tree. "I made that when I was 5, she announced. "It's not perfect, but it's the most important ornament, 'cause Mommy helped me." Daniel's eyes softened as he looked at it. "It's perfect," he said quietly. They sat down to dinner, and at first, the conversation was polite, stories about Lily's school, Tom's job at the hardware store, and the weather. But slowly, the table filled with laughter. Daniel told about the time a goat on a farm near his base had stolen an officer's hat and refused to give it back. Tom recounted the time Lily had tried to bake cookies for his birthday and had filled the apartment with smoke. Halfway through dessert, Daniel's laughter faded into a thoughtful silence. He looked at the lights on the tree and said, "I haven't sat at a Christmas table like this in years. Usually, it's a mess hall, or a motel room somewhere. I didn't realize how much I missed this." Lily slipped away for a moment and returned holding a knitted scarf, clumsy in its stitching but bright and warm. "This is for you," she said, placing it in Daniel's hands. Daniel looked down at it, his jaw tightening just slightly before he smiled. "Thank you," he whispered. Then, slowly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the photograph he'd been holding earlier. He handed it to Tom. The picture showed a young woman with laughing eyes holding a newborn baby. "My wife and son," Daniel said, his voice quiet but steady. "They didn't make it. Car accident. 3 years ago, right before Christmas." The room went still. Tom's throat tightened. "I thought maybe I'd stopped believing in Christmas altogether," Daniel continued. "But tonight, you reminded me it's still out there. That kindness still exists." Tom nodded. "We've both lost people we love, Daniel. But maybe that's why we have to hold on to the ones we can." They talked late into the night, sharing stories about the people they had loved and lost, about the strange way life could bring strangers together at just the right time. Eventually, Tom offered Daniel the couch. Before turning in, Daniel knelt beside Lily and said, "You gave me the best Christmas gift anyone could ever give. You made me feel like I belonged." When Tom woke the next morning, the couch was empty. On the kitchen table sat a folded note. "You saved me last night. More than you'll ever know. Merry Christmas, my family for a night." Tom read it twice before placing it in a small wooden box with his most treasured keepsakes, Rachel's wedding ring, Lily's first drawing of their family, and now, Daniel's words. Every Christmas after, Tom and Lily set an extra place at the table. Sometimes no one filled it. Other years, it was for a neighbor who had nowhere else to go, or a stranger passing through. Because sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can be someone's lifeline.